I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: are the movies Operation Finale and Hold the Dark any good? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because if you're a regular Netflix watcher, you will know that in the last week or so, two very promising looking films have landed on Netflix. The first is Operation Finale. The second is Hold the Dark. And now that I've seen both, I thought I would give a basic review, let you know my thoughts on those two films. By the way, there's going to be plenty of spoilers. So if you don't want to have either film spoiled, go away, watch the films, and then come back later. First of all, Operation Finale. Operation Finale is a film which is about the true events surrounding the capture of Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann. So the Israeli government, after the war, hunts down Eichmann in Argentina, where he has fled to after the end of World War II. And he's one of the pivotal architects and players in the Final Solution and the concentration camp program and the killing of 6 million plus Jewish people that was perpetrated by the Nazis. So he's obviously quite an important figure. They want to bring him to trial. And so an operation is mounted to go into Argentina, to send the Mossad in there, to capture, to kidnap, and then to bring Eichmann back to Israel so he can be put on trial. Here's how I would describe this film. This film is, I think, well-made but flawed. It is a very well-made film, but I think ultimately it's a little bit flawed. First of all, you've got guys like Oscar Isaac, who's in the lead role, and you've also got Ben Kingsley playing the role of Adolf Eichmann. These are actors with some acting chops, and the quality of the filmmaking all round is good. However, there are some things that I felt just sort of missed the mark a little bit. First of all, there's a couple of brief moments, and this probably is more on the nitpicking side, but it sort of stuck out to me, was early on in the film, there are a couple of little montage moments that feel just a little bit too whimsical for the tone of the rest of the film and the serious gravity of the subject matter and this incident and what it actually represents. And it just, I don't know why, but there's a couple of moments that just felt a little bit whimsical in this film, and like tonally they were a little bit inconsistent. Most of them are very early in the film. There's one scene with Eichmann on the toilet, and it just I don't know, it just didn't quite feel right. Now, those scenes could have been included, but just played a little differently. I think they would have been a bit more tonally consistent. They're not major, they don't detract in any major way from the film, but for me they stuck out. Here's some of the bigger things that I struggled with this film. First of all, this film, and when you're creating a movie like this, you've got two things that you're sort of trying to hold in tension here. And how do we make a film about the capture of Adolf Eichmann? Because you've got two issues at play here. One is the grave evil of the Holocaust. The other is the actual plot to kidnap and then escape out of Argentina with Adolf Eichmann, which was it was no mean feat that they actually managed to pull this off. And so you've got these two different concepts here, story concepts. How do you hold them in tension? What do you focus on? How do you tell that story well? Now, I compare this film to something like, say, Argo, and I think Argo, which is very similar, and that it's got the Iranian Revolution and the events of that form the backdrop to this escape attempt where you have to get these diplomatic officials, you have to sneak in there and then get them out of Iran safely. And so there's a very similar sort of plot going on in these two films. Argo, I think, really got it right, because what Argo did was it focused primarily on the escape plot, getting in and getting these people out. It focused on that as the primary focus of the film. What Operation Finale does is it tries to play a bit of a balancing act between the Holocaust and the events of the Holocaust and Eichmann's involvement in the Holocaust, and also the escape attempt where they go into Argentina and then flee Argentina after the kidnapping of Eichmann. And it feels a little bit like the actual important aspect here should have been the focus on this plot to kidnap Eichmann and bring him back out to trial. Unfortunately, though, there are elements of that feel a little bit rushed, because they try and hold these two things in tension and they try and walk a balancing act. And it just feels like there's some real missed opportunities here as a result. So first of all, one of the big missed opportunities I think that they have here was that the trial of Adolf Eichmann was actually one of the first occasions where the public got to hear in the media first-hand witness testimony from survivors of the Holocaust. This was a very important trial in that regard. Now that fact gets a very brief mention as a written credit at the end of the film. That's all that gets. Yet I would have thought that was a missed opportunity to actually explore what this means and how important this was and how important this moment in history was, the fact that he was brought to trial. And it feels like things like that were sort of compromised and sacrificed and were forced to play second fiddle to sort of less important aspects or certain sort of dramatic moments they were trying to go for around the question of the Holocaust. And I understand that. It would have been very difficult to try and tell the story, but it just feels a little bit like there are points around the whole kidnapping plot and the trial that get rushed, and there's an opportunity to explore those things and they missed. The other big thing that I think was really missed here was the fact that Adolf Eichmann's trial was the trial where Hannah Arendt, who was the German-born, and then subsequently she fled to America after the Nazis took over, German-born political philosopher who observed the trial of Adolf Eichmann, and she coined that famous phrase, the banality of evil, to describe what she saw in that trial. This banal-looking elderly man who did not look like this monstrous, evil character that she had expected to see, yet he had been one of the pivotal players in one of the gravest acts of evil, one of the worst genocides of the last 100 years of the modern era. And this was a really important aspect of Adolf Eichmann's trial, I think, and it doesn't even get a single mention. And why I think it's important is because it was an opportunity to explore this idea that very often the people who are the perpetrators of the most monstrous and evil ideologies, they don't look like monsters, and that's where the real danger lies. They don't have fangs and horns and glowing red eyes. If they did, we'd recognize the evil straight away. Instead, they look and sound and seem very reasonable and very innocuous. And the danger is we're focusing on the person instead of questioning the truth of the ideology that they're putting forward. That's where the monstrous component lies. That's where the real danger, where the evil actually lies. And it seems to me that this was a prime opportunity to actually explore that idea and to really unpack that. Because I think it's important that as a culture we're armed with a good sort of philosophical understanding and a good set of philosophical tools for unpacking and questioning the truth or the falsity, the dangers or the positive benefits of particular ideas, particularly as they play out in the political sphere. And it feels like this was a prime opportunity to really do that. Now, one of the reasons why this didn't play out is not just because they don't even mention at all Hannah Arendt and her role in all of this, but you've got someone like Ben Kingsley, an actor with the gravity of sort of and the persona of Ben Kingsley, who is playing the role of Adolf Eichmann, and I think that was a bit of a mistake. Now, not because I dislike Ben Kingsley, I think he's a great actor. He could have played this role differently, but what is unsurprising is that Ben Kingsley brought a certain gravitas to this role, and effectively what you've got is Eichmann here feels too much like a monster. The tendency in these situations is to want to demonize in a major way the people who carried out these grave and awful evils. Of course, as I said, the danger is that we end up arming ourselves with this false idea that you can easily spot the perpetrators of grave evil because they look like monsters. In actual fact, that's not how these things play out in the real world at all. And so what you've got is the sense with Adolf Eichmann in this film that he has still got too much of the psychopath in him. He doesn't look and feel enough like an innocuous bureaucrat, accountant type figure who participated in these horrific atrocities. And I think this is where perhaps a different actor or a different style of playing this character would have actually really changed the whole dynamic here. And I think about an actor like Mark Rylance, the actor, the British actor who is, well, probably most recently was famous for his role in Bridge of Spies. He plays Rudolph Abel. And that character of Rudolph Abel, I think, is really the type of character that you needed to see in this portrayal of Adolf Eichmann. This character who you sort of look at and you think, my gosh, how could someone like this be so pivotal in perpetrating one of the greatest evils in human history? And I think that opportunity was really missed. So for me, Overall, this film, as I said, is a missed opportunity, and there are things that it doesn't quite get right, even though this is a well-made and well-acted film. If nothing else, this is not a film that you're going to get to the end of and think, oh, I wish I hadn't watched that, or that was a waste of time. It actually said it is a well-made film. It's just a missed opportunity, and those flaws for me just let the film down. It could have been something truly great. It just doesn't quite achieve that as a film. Now, Hold the Dark is a different kettle of fish altogether. With Hold the Dark, you have got a film which is just truly beautifully shot. The cinematography in this film, at times, it's just glorious. It's just something else to behold. The acting, again, is really solid, and some of the directorial choices I really liked about this film. The scenes where you have dialogue between characters where the camera holds on particular characters, and there's these sort of awkward pauses, and that's exactly what should be happening in those particular dialogue scenes, and you feel the awkwardness of it. There are other moments where you think, what's going to happen? There's real tension in some of these scenes, and there's a real skill to doing that with the camera and with the way you shoot and direct actors and you shoot and direct scenes, and this movie has that sort of stuff in spades. But ultimately, what I think lets this film down is its nihilism. It's based on a novel. It's a story about a brother and sister who are in an incestuous relationship. The film starts with a guy who's a famous expert on wolves, and he's hunted down a particular wolf, and he's contacted by this lady who's lost her son supposedly to wolves, and so she calls him in. Her husband, or the boy's father, who, as I said, we subsequently discover is actually her brother. They're in an incestuous relationship. Is off fighting the war in Afghanistan, and so she says that she needs something to show him. So she wants this wolf hunter to go and hunt down and capture this wolf, and so she has to have something to show the boy's father when he gets home. And the nihilism, I think, really lets it down. There's just no heroism, there's no redemption at all in this film. I have a belief about art that art should do one of two things. Good art should either elevate or motivate you. It should elevate you in some way, and elevate your attention towards things that are good, that are true, and that are beautiful. Or if it's a film that explores, say, dark and difficult subject matter that's not necessarily going to leave you elevated, feeling elevated afterwards, it should motivate you in some way to perhaps contemplate these issues more deeply, or to want to do something about injustice or evil in the world. And I think that's what good art should do. But this film, it doesn't do either. It just mires you in this nihilistic and sort of evil and very morally confused tone. So the issue of the incest between the brother and the sister, it's a bit more subtle in the film. It's not really played up. In fact, a lot of people have missed that point that they are brother and sister. If you go back and you know that, you go, oh, that's why that, oh, yeah, of course, okay. So some people have missed it, but it's very morally ambiguous about this question of the moral rightness or wrongness of incest. And I don't like it personally when films create a moral confusion, or they are what you might call morally complacent about important issues. And so that was frustrating for me. Secondly, though, there's just this sort of Nietzschean sort of materialistic nihilism here. Aside from the who am I to judge sort of element around the question of the incest, there's also this confused lack of redemption and heroism around what we see played out on screen. It's just like, effectively, we, the audience, are called to be witnesses, just like our main character, the wolf hunter, to the evil and the psychopathic evil and brutality that's being carried out by this brother and sister in this relationship. And there's no beauty or goodness in that, and you get to the end of the film and it's just sort of like this moral complacency, which is sort of, I think, one of the great plagues of our age, is just we're so morally complacent when we shouldn't be. And this film really is a movie for its times in that regard. It's just morally complacent, it's morally ambiguous, the nihilism really lets it down. There's no opportunity to explore, to elevate, to motivate, to explore these deeper themes. Instead, you've got something that artistically is well made and looks extremely beautiful, but ultimately it has no moral heart. And for me, it fails as art if it's missing such an essential component. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on PayPal or Patreon. There's a link for both in the video description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.